Now, the federal government has warned Nigerians to expect heavy flooding this year, listing Lagos and Osun states as likely to experience more flood-related disasters. Director General of Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, Mr. Clement Nze, who gave the advice at a press conference in Abuja, said not less than 18 states have started experiencing flood disasters at a period the country was yet to enter the peak of the rainy season. He said current flood incidents were caused by inadequate drainage systems as localized heavy downpour generated the flash and urban flooding, adding that river and coastal flooding are yet to set in. He said Lagos and Ogun states may likely experience the 3 stages of floods: urban, river, and coastal flooding due to their geographical location. Joining me in the studio is Philip Jakbo, Director of Programs, Kappa. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure being here.
At the time we are yet to enter the peak of the rainy season, we are already seeing cars submerged and all of it, and a lot of people are complaining, making videos. We saw the video, yet we are saying we should expect more. I wonder how concerning, disturbing this development is for you. And let's help us make better sense of this development. Why is it different from other days or other years that we have seen?
Well, I think the starting point is we must commend the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency for their early warnings. So one thing we will agree is that we are getting better by the year with the predictions.
Okay.
But like like you just reported, one thing is very evident. Despite the early warning system we have in place, the state governments are doing practically nothing to address the situation. What we've been hearing is climate change. Of course, climate change makes us have unusual rains. Right. The rains have been very, very heavy. That is, nobody is disputing that. But we have only been talking about the rains getting heavier and not things that we should do to ensure that our people do not suffer needlessly. The incident you mentioned 2 weeks ago in Lagos, we had hundreds of cars practically submerged. Everybody on his own. People have to take responsibility. Right. And these things are because people in government who are tasked with the responsibility of preparing people, because we have had these warnings. There are some things that government should do at all levels, federal and state. But unfortunately, they are not doing these things. There are some things they can do in the short term, because now we have the warnings. It's going to happen most likely in September. It's already happening.
It's already happening.
In Taraba, we had flooding that, submerged about 300 houses. In Katsina, about 1,500 houses, farmlands were affected. Now, of course, this is going to have grave implications, not only on socioeconomic, lives of people. It's also going to have implication on agriculture. Look at the northern part of the country where you already have security crisis. A lot of people have left the farms. Now we're adding flooding of the little farms that still exist. So in 2022, we might actually have hunger in the land.
Oh, we've been talking about that.
Because we are not doing just those basics. And like the agency mentioned, it is not so much as the rains causing the problems. It is the fact that the drains are blocked. The canals are not open.
Are these things, drains are not opened. These things are not supposed to be that difficult to do, because we see government at the various levels embarking on several projects. This should be part of what we should see government doing. But
exactly.
We still get this early warning signs, yet nothing is done. Is it that difficult to do? Help us understand.
The political will is not there. I think that is very, very important. Like I said, since 2012, particularly, we have been having this kind of floods. In 2012, the flood that happened that, engulfed about 21 or so states, about 323 or so people died. Yeah. In Lokoja, for instance, which was the epicenter of the crisis, a major part
of the state was submerged.
About 200,000 hectares of farmland was submerged. So you could, and subsequently, we've been having, it has become a yearly thing. So we always talk about it. It's going to happen. And that's why I started by saying that NIMET and the Hydrological Services Agency, they have been doing their job. But the states have not been doing their jobs. They have not been following up with either short or long-term, interventions. And like I mentioned...
Is it because, the people that are feeling the pains are not holding their governments to account? Because it has to be governance is a two-way thing. Because you go through this thing every year. Are you speaking with your government? I mean, there should be some level, because we still, Lagos State talking about town hall meetings. I do not know if issues like this are being presented, to their representatives to ensure that we are going through this. Something has to be done. I mean, people's cars, when we understand the situation in the economy right now, those cars, their engines are gone. People need to begin to speak up, don't you think, at this point?
Well, those are the kind of things we are doing. And like I will always see, even your organization is doing more than the government should do, because what you are doing here is alerting the government, educating people. So people watching this understand what is happening, and they need truly to hold our elected representatives and people in government accountable. But why we put the blame on the feet of the government is because the agency that is also raising this alarm, this alert, is an agency of government. So it shows that there's no synergy in government, because we have had this kind of floods. It happened in Germany. About 170,000 people died in, about 170 people died in Germany. In Belgium, about 38 people. Now, in those countries, truly, like you mentioned, the people are holding the government accountable. But even at that, in Belgium, where everybody that dies matters, but they only lost 38 people, a magistrate in one of the cities, the city of Liege, is going as far as commissioning an investigation to know who is responsible. Involuntary, the case is about involuntary homicide. Who is that person or people who did not have foresight that this was going to happen? Right. And if they even had the foresight, what did they do to ensure that the impact that the people felt didn't get to that level? In Germany, the citizens are asking the government to ensure that those who are on the path of the floods get SMS and they evacuate to high ground. And it's not like they say evacuate and they are not making plans for that. There are plans for that. And these are between now and September that we expect the rains to kick off again. Yeah. There are some things that can be done, and those are the things we've mentioned. Is it too much to set up shelter on high ground so that we can evacuate people from those riverine areas and let them stay there, and after the floods they come, because it has become, like I said, a yearly thing. So it's almost like it's now a culture, and so government is relaxing. But at on a longer term, on a longer shot, look at some recommendations, for instance, because the floods, as these rains increase, it's likely that Lagdo Dam in Cameroon and the dams that we also have, Kenji and the rest of them, might also start getting overfilled, and there will be need to release waters. Are we planning for that? When the Lagdo Dam was built between 1977 and 1979, Nigeria was supposed to build what they call buffer dams, small dams, because the Lagdo Dam is upstream, Cameroon is upstream, we are downstream. Yeah. So naturally, when waters are released, it comes down this way. And the epicenter, where River Niger and Benue meet is Lokoja, for instance. Yeah. So it's likely that you are going to have the kind of flooding that we have in 2012 at the rate we are going. And then it starts coming down and empties into the Atlantic. So communities, Bayelsa, they are going to feel these things.
We do not have a buffer dam as it is.
There's no buffer dam. And we have been talking, but nothing. So we are supposed to build those small buffer dams to assimilate those waters. The Nigerian government has been talking since 1979 and done nothing about it. So that's why we're having these kind of situations at the national level. But again, at the state level, this is like we have just said, clearing the canals. Is it too much? Opening up the drains, ensuring that we build these shelters. When COVID came, we saw the speed with which government set up these centers, that could accommodate the number expected to, be down with COVID. Why can't we do the same thing and even have something permanent for the floods? Because it is now a yearly thing. It is as simple as that. But unfortunately, it's not happening. Then, of course, the same state governments are the ones that also allocate plots to people on flood plains, areas that are supposed to be, free from any obstruction. Look at the Lekki corridor, for instance. Look at the reclamation exercises going on there. Look at the sand filling. Once there is a disaster in the Lekki axis, for instance, once we have massive flooding, nobody can escape.
They've been feeling the pain.
Yes, they have. But we are now at the mercy of the elements. And as this climate change crisis continues to escalate, and we have been told, I think some days back, we had the Lagos state government, for instance, saying that by 2029 or 29 years from now, the Victoria Island or so is going to be submerged. It's going to be covered. So why do we have all those kind of activities going on there?
Why are we not stopping?
Why are we not stopping it?
If you can project.
The rains we had just 2 weeks ago, and the entire Lekki Express, people could not even, come out of their houses. People were, it's unfortunate. So now imagine if we have, it was just like 4 or 5 hours rain 2 weeks ago. So what if we have rain extending like 12 hours, the kind of things that this
4 days, 5 days,
or 5 days or
7 days,
that
as
means,
we usually have.
It's a no-go area. So it's just government taking, this as a priority. In fact, this is a state of emergency that should be declared on the issue of flooding, rather than every year you get these predictions and governments do nothing.
Is there something that can be done on the flood-prone areas such that we do not have to keep telling these persons, move, to a safer place, something environmentally friendly to ensure their safety? Because for how long will we keep moving every year?
Well, as long as we don't have alternatives for those people. We don't have alternatives for those people. Government is not ready to, build the Morocco example. We don't have those kind of things. So if we don't have it, we must also plan, because the developed countries we are talking about, where you have the hurricane, people are in Florida and elsewhere, people are always evacuated and they come back. So if we want to accept that as the way to go, all we need to do is just to set up those shelters on high ground to ensure that, once the flood season is approaching, we just tell the people to evacuate. They go to those places, and after some time they come back. But I think what we should look at more is the fact that government itself is breaching its own laws when they allocate plots to people on those floodplains that should not accommodate people. The ones people in the riverine areas, some of them have been there for generations.
Yeah.
So it's different from a situation where government deliberately, does the so-called reclamation or sand filling and then starts allocating land. So it's government itself breaching its own laws.
Now, let's look at what the level of engagement with governments now, because we have been talking about government not doing what it should. Are we pushing engagement with government, reminding them perhaps on a yearly basis as well? This is coming. Whenever we hear the early warning signs, agencies or organizations like yours go to meet government to say, we are receiving this early warning signs. What are we doing? What are the plans on the ground?
Well, we continue to, at that level, we are also engaging.
Right.
And talking is also part of the engagement. We do that. But like I said, we don't see government responding as it should. And we don't see synergy between NEMA and SEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, and the state level agencies working together. Because by now, we should also be hearing from those agencies
what their plans are.
Maybe choppers are in place to ensure that people who are going to be displaced and they are not accessible by boats, they will be able to access them. Those are the kind of things they should be telling us, rather than just the alarm we get that flood is going to be flooding.
There's going to be flooding. All right.
What can government do? What is government doing? That is what they are doing in Germany. That's what they are doing in Belgium, China, and elsewhere. The people are encouraged that the government is doing something. Here, all we hear is gloom, doom, nothing else.
We hope that government takes necessary steps, because the implications is not something that one would want to think about as we speak. But thank you so much, Philly Jakpo, Director of Programs, CAPA, for your time on the program.
Thank you.
We'll take a break now, and when we return, we will be looking through the papers. Stay with us.